Let's get into some bull market territory today with crypto crashes. Is it over? There's a lot of things that are broken out there, Coinbase, all sorts of things happening in the market today. You don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. They are the place for your crypto IRA. All you have to do is jump over to their website, itrustcapital.com, and you can jump into Bitcoin, Ethereum. You can take a look at some altcoins. So if you've got some Solana or some Avalanche over there, you can also use that right there in your crypto IRA. The cool part is this: you get to manage your entire portfolio and you're only paying on your transactions. So no fees monthly. And best of all, you get a $100 funding reward just when you use our link. So make sure and check that out from our link down below. Let's get into it today. There's a lot happening. If you guys are tuned in right now, make sure and drop some questions over on the side. We'll try to get to some of those a little bit later. We are trying to go, as you can tell, a little bit more often on the live stream. So we'd love to get your feedback and how you guys are playing the market. A couple of things, of course, you have to pay attention to right now. 1.1 billion liquidated from crypto market in the past 24 hours. I know that was a big number in the sense of, headlines. But in reality, the correction happened pretty fast. And even in some of the data that we were tracking within our market sentiment index, the reversal was almost within hours on both positive, neutral, and negative sentiment. So it was kind of interesting to see the movement of the market. ETH came back very quickly and now, punched back up to what could be a 4K high. We'll talk about that in a second. Other things out there, Joe Consorti hit on something. Bitcoin ETF inflows reached a new high of almost $1 billion yesterday, clocking in at 995 mil. That's huge. And of course, IBIT is leading it with 788 million. ETF investors unfazed by yesterday's dump, still accumulating in earnest, it looks like. This is something I tweeted about earlier as well. Looks like ETF holders are the ones that are the hodl gang. They seem to be unfazed. And this might be more in line with what traditional investors do. Not that they see this kind of volatility, but maybe they've kind of understood that this is one of those they have to kind of just sit back and relax on, which is so cool to see that happen. Bitcoin rebounded. Many people are still pointing at this 150 target. And this is the one that is interesting because at the velocity in which we hit 69K, the fact that we've been able to recover almost in a 24-hour period, and yeah, we're not back at 69, but Bitcoin is definitely not falling. The question is whether or not this 150 target can hit. A couple of points that they hit on in this article is selling pressure, likely to drive profit taking at some of these historical highs in miners. I think the 100K number is going to be a hard number to overcome because, one, it was so resident in last bull run. Almost everybody, including myself, was calling for that. And I think outside of just some of the things that happened in the last bull run versus what we're seeing in this bull run, there could be some possibilities here. I want to get into a clip here. This clip is a little bit more from Anthony Scaramucci. He's talking about these kind of dips. Listen in.
But a $9,000 move in 4 hours, even for Bitcoin, that seems bonkers.
Okay, but I want to take you back to 2021, the lead up. And so you had Bitcoin correct 10% or more 13 times on the March in 2021 from 3,800 to 69,000. And so this is the first big correction. I guess one of the other things we should be talking to people about is that it's a 50% move from the beginning of the year or since the inception of the ETF. So,
all right. So, I mean, when you look at the chart, I know that many people in Wall Street, mainstream media, they don't see these kind of volatility moves much. There's a handful that have hit that, maybe in the early cycles. And when I say early cycles of these IPOs, where we saw big moves, then, massive pullbacks. But I think what Scaramucci is talking about is this range right here on the chart. Let me kind of zoom in on this little area. And you can kind of get a little bit of feedback. This was the ETF, remember, back here on January 11th. This is the pullback that we saw just in a few days. This is still right now on the 2 hour. And if you look at that pullback from that period right there, let's see if we can Gantt that down. There was a nice 10% pullback right there in just a few hours. And continuing through as we continue to see it kind of dive down. TradingView has been jumping in and out as well. So the key here is that volatility is expected. I don't think many people that are watching our show are too worried about this right now. I think everybody still is on point with where this market is going. Now, there's still a lot of macro news. There's a lot of things happening. We'll show you a Powell clip here in a bit. But I think the key here is, where's the big money going? And of course, that's BlackRock. BlackRock bought 12,000 Bitcoin yesterday. That's 14 times the daily supply. And at some point, this has to give. At some point, max supply versus max availability and where the market is at that current point in time, it is going to get very interesting where we see one of those parabolic moves, God candles, and that's, I think, the one that everybody has to really kind of pay attention to. Don't forget, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure and take some time, step back, just hit that little subscribe, and make sure and hit the bell because we are going live more often, so it's going to give you a notification. And always hit me out there on Twitter. DM me if you don't get a bell because I'm kind of curious. I've had a few people talk about that here recently. It's just @PaulBaron. Check me over there and let me know. This is kind of an interesting tweet right here. History repeats, just like 2020. Bitcoin saw all-time high, then a 15% dip. Yep. Open interest forced to dump. Funding reset to neutral. 900 million in late longs were liquidated. So pretty typical of what we've seen in these cycles. Now, it doesn't mean that this cycle is the same because I think we wouldn't have seen the recovery that we saw yesterday to today, just in less than 24 hours, had it not been for the consistency of what's happening, I think, in the ETFs. ETFs are still bolstering as a pillar in the market, especially for Bitcoin. Remember, how Bitcoin goes does the rest of the market. ETH we'll talk about, and even some of the big, the blue chip altcoins as well. Also in a very interesting spot because you did see a lot of retracement and then some crazy token regains today. Render was one. There's been several. Uniswap, of course, has continued to move along with many more. A couple of things I want to get to. This is another clip by Mooch talking about the comparison between stocks and Bitcoin. Listen in.
How are the mechanics of Bitcoin different than an equity? How does Bitcoin get sold so quickly given its mechanism is so different?
Many of the viewers and listeners, CNBC, know well there were tons of shorts in Tesla with Tesla's march upward, and there was lots of oscillation. If you want to go way back, and I'll date myself back into the early 2000s, we watched Amazon go from 116 to $10, and people were calling for the death of Amazon. And of course, Amazon became one of the most successful companies in human history. So this is still immature. To your point, we don't have the options, derivative markets. Those options and derivatives on the Bitcoin ETFs have yet to be approved by the SEC. So we do have high margin over-the-counter instruments that are being used by brokers in the Bitcoin market, but those are sloppy and they're inefficient. So you probably need 6 or 12 more months of stabilization. And let me just make this last point. We have 5% adoption of Bitcoin globally. That puts us right about March of 1999 if you were comparing it to Web 1.
Interesting timing there because he is right. If you look at the adoption curve, March 90, that's crazy in the comparison when you think about really where the internet growth began and how quickly we saw most of that technology adoption, which I think, again, you still have to look at many of these cryptocurrencies just as that, technology adoption. Here was a headline, MicroStrategy, after announcing that it's going to basically that it will sell 600 million bonds to buy Bitcoin, changed its plans upwards. So even though we saw a pullback, they're saying, hey, wait, we think we could go a little bit further into this. And if you look at this right now, they're saying, hey, let's go and purchase an additional 100 million in aggregate to make this happen. And this is going to be on a 13-day period from the date of issuance. So they're talking about moving quickly. That tells you something. Timing is a very critical point. Remember, right now, MicroStrategy holding 193,000 Bitcoin. Massive. This guy is either going to go down as the ultimate gangster, I think. The way he's played this market since 2020, which a lot of people have still said, Saylor was wrong. And obviously he's proven many people wrong themselves as well. So summary of the the testimony from Chair Powell. I know a lot of people are looking at this and say, mainly what I'm looking for is there going to be a Fed rate cut. That's what it boils down to. This tweet from Kobe Easy kind of wraps it up a little bit. Don't expect rate cuts until more confidence inflation is moving substantially to 2%. Inflation is proved, but still above the 2 long-term target. So they're saying much more data still needed. A couple of things he did note, though: risk on cutting interest rates too early and too late. This is the problem that I think we're in right now, is the early or the too late. If he doesn't hit this in that Goldilocks center, this could be bad for the economy in general, one that we could spiral into a really bad position economically in the U.S. Labor market demand still exceeding supply. That's an issue. And then the appropriate rate cut sometime in 2024. That's another question mark as to whether or not we'll see one. I think June is the go, no-go date. And the reason I say that is because of the impact it could have on the election. If we don't see something by June, is it too late to happen where it doesn't look as though it's politically charged? I think that's a big rock and a hard place that the Fed is in right now. I want to cut to another clip. This is Powell talking about a rate cut this year. Listen in.
Past 3 years of high inflation and the impact on American families. And now that inflation is receding, there's been a great deal of speculation about when the Fed would cut rates. Some say that it's going to be a lot of rate cutting this year. Some say none. What say you?
I say that really it will depend on the path of the economy. Our focus is on maximum employment and price stability, and the incoming data as they affect the outlook, and those are the things we'll be looking at. I can go further if you'd like.
So at what point will the Fed be forced to cut rates? What does the data, what kind of data would you point to, and do you have any updates there?
What we've said is that the committee would like to see more data that confirm and make us more confident that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. We have some confidence of that. Inflation, headline inflation has moved down more than 3 full percentage points now to 2.4%, as I mentioned in my remarks. We want to see a little bit more data so that we can become confident and so that we can take that step of beginning to reduce policy rates. It's a very important step. We think because of the strength in the economy and the strength in the labor market and the progress we've made, we can approach that step carefully and thoughtfully and with greater confidence. And when we reach that confidence, the expectation is we will do so sometime this year. We can then begin dialing back the restriction on our policy.
So clear, this is one of those situations where Powell has just said, listen, we're going to hold everything. We're not pulling back, and most likely this is still higher for longer. The key here is going to be some of these critical data points coming in, including jobs numbers, also what we're seeing just with some of the CPI data that continues to flow in. But I think this gets to a point where it becomes a little bit more of a challenge for the Fed, because if they don't pull out soon, we could be in for a different economic ramp. Now, what does that play into in terms of the crypto markets? There's many factors that could go into this, because remember, inflation going high, a lot of people have still looked at the securities market as being a place, and why we're seeing 51, 5,200 now on the Dow, that these high numbers coming in from Wall Street are mainly Americans saying, listen, we're getting pounded in inflation. We might as well invest in securities, which could be the scenario. So that's the question, is how does the market play out if, in fact, that we don't get a Fed rate cut in June or by June? What does that do to the rest of the year? Do we start to see some more pressure there? By the way, if you guys are not over on our and joined in on our Diamond Circle, let me kind of bring up our new Diamond Circle sign-up page. All you have to do is just visit Paul Barron Network. You can find it. Click that button right there. You jump in on the Diamond Circle. It's very easy and super simple. And we've launched a new Telegram group, so only for Diamond Circle members. So check it out. I think you guys will like it. Now, regulation is the big next step. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are looking at right now because of what we will see in terms of pressure. Here's an example. Right here is CFTC Chair Benham tells lawmakers, hey, we need some regulation, and we need it now. We need to fill the gap in the crypto regulation. He said this week, another period from irrational exuberance would be an understatement. This notion of crypto going away, it's just not going to work. We need to act. Congress needs to act and fill this gap very quickly. So he's all in. I think there's a lot of people that are moving in this direction. and both from a lawmaker standpoint, but maybe from a political party standpoint as well. Now, I don't know that the administration, as in the current administration, is there yet, but I think there's a lot of regulators that are starting to pretty much kind of position themselves into, I think, an interesting spot. And one of those is Commissioner Paris. And that, of course, comes in from this right here. So this was a situation where Shapeshift, if you guys don't know, Shapeshift was, they pivoted their business model. We've had Eric on our show before, prior to their pivot. And essentially, they went after, being an SEC, went after them. That, of course, the dissenting remarks from, Commissioner Pierce was kind of funny because she almost was just making fun of the whole situation, almost like a scene from a film. And I think that's the point, is that you're seeing regulators that are just, guys, this is just silly, the way that we're treating this market. I think now the ETFs have pretty much proved to the general markets, this is not going away. And not only is it not going away, we're starting to see professional, smart investors around the world really playing a big role in the future of where crypto is going. Of course, Bitcoin being the big one. Don't forget, drop some comments and some questions over on the side. I'll try to get to some of those for you guys. And also, this is kind of the last thing that could happen. I don't know if it's going to go through, but this was, for what it's worth, this is Bitcoin Magazine reporting on this. Arizona State Senate is now considering Bitcoin as an ETF or into an ETF for its state retirement portfolios. First of all, this would be a huge move if any state said, hey, let's go into a Bitcoin ETF. But I think in this particular case, it would put a lot of pressure onto the regulators and the lawmakers to make this thing happen, because this is kind of one of those last little elements that will start to move. And if this does happen, if we do see more pressure on this coming out of Arizona, which is a purple state, is kind of interesting. So that tells me this is a bipartisan approach, both by the Republicans or the Democrats. We are dealing with something that works for everybody. And I think that's what maybe the message is starting to make its way to DC. We'll see. If we get a stablecoin bill passed, that will be the tell for sure. Further in, of course, ETH hit 3,900. We talked a little bit about that. And this is one, I'm going to zoom in on that. Sometimes my Twitter is never in the right spot. But 3,900, this is a very bullish signal for Ethereum. I think the question is now, does ETH make its way to 4K? And when does that happen? Well, I think we're going to do a poll on that statement right there as well. Further into this, I think this is a good summary of kind of what to expect in these bull markets. If you're brand new, maybe it's your first time you've bought Bitcoin, or maybe you own ETFs, maybe you bought your first, ETH. I don't know. But the key is, how do you respond to these kind of volatility moves? This was a good statement. If this is your first bull market, suggest you do not trade top much, meaning be careful. Just hold a few blue chips. I think everybody, whether you're holding ETH, Solana, Avalanche, Cardano, whatever you think is a blue chip, and have the guts to bear the pain for some of the drawdown, and then wait for 4 months and see what happens. And that's probably going to give you a better performance. But the interesting thing about crypto is it moves quickly. There are tops, and there are some of these kind of underscored projects out there that make their way to the top. And that is much like what you see in the meme coins and things of that nature. But the key there is that's a very culture-driven concept that I think drives a lot of what we're seeing. 80% of the money comes in the last 20% of the cycle. That's another one I do agree with. These are tops. This is not one of them. This is just one step in the process of being able to go through. I think the key here is how this plays out in the macro markets going to the next stage. That's a very, very big factor. All right, so I think we're going to go to a poll. Let's take a look at that real quick and see what you guys came up with. All right, when will ETH hit 4K? Before upgrade this week, 43%. Later in the month, and then today. Ooh, wow, very bullish on ETH. That's almost, 80%? Yeah, 80%. That's great. Anyway, if you guys like the live streams, hit the like button right now. If you like us to do these live streams and this works for you, if it's the right time, we went a little bit early today, kind of check it out, let us know just by hitting the like button. Normally we'll try to take some questions, but I think we're going to roll on out of here. Hey, listen, thanks guys for stopping in today. We really appreciate it. Like I said, jump into the Diamond Circle. And if you want, hit me up there on X. It's at Paul Barron. Catch you next time right here on TechBath.